Back in the day, there was a place in Metro Manila isolated from the rest. Imagine a quiet rural area just 8 kilometers from the economic center. And even before Boracay was a thing, this was the known getaway for the wealthy in the Philippines. Welcome to Navotas. It is along the coastline of Manila Bay, found in the northwesternmost city of Metro Manila. The reason why it's isolated from the rest is because of it being divided by the Navotas River on the city's east and north front. Furthermore, with the Tulyahan River splitting the Navotas into two separate regions, creating a coastal city. Life before Navotas was simpler, it being surrounded by bodies of water made it teeming with fish, thus attracting fishermen. But of course, with the unstoppable force of urbanization, other livelihoods have popped up in the past decades. The city still remains the top supplier of the metropolis's fish's needs. You may think that now there are plenty more fishing ports in the area, but that is not the case. Factories are getting more abundant, especially in the North Bay region, and houses are multiplying in an unhealthy state. Informal settlers are spilling out of the edges of the riverside, people are residing on cemeteries, houses are cramped creating potential fire casualties. Housing may be a problem, but the nail on the coffin when traveling around Navotas is a pain.
This is Manang Jocelyn. Right now, she's delivering this bucket of chicken to somewhere in Malabon City. Her story is that she was a housewife for her two twin children and her husband. During the pandemic, the family started using their savings, so they needed to find other alternatives to earn back the money. Luckily, her husband's work was flexible, but the pay was cut in half. Thus, Manang Jocelyn would volunteer to help out too. Luckily, they had a family bike that was not in use. Manang Jocelyn got the idea to be a courier delivery driver. She even heard from her family members that the income was better than the average. Manang Jocelyn's family lives in Navotas but close to the border of Malabon City. This makes her situated in both cities. She would bike alongside cars and trucks, and just solely that's already mentally taxing for her. She experienced drivers berating her for not giving way. She would have close calls with vehicles running her over because of them turning right in front of her, and trucks zooming by with wheels bigger than her. It was like a field full of landmines. One wrong move and everything could turn out devastating. This delivery itself was physically draining, especially for someone who has no background in biking. She would have to lug around two bulky water bottles and refill it whichever carinderia she would be eating lunch at. It was raining a couple minutes ago in this residential area, and it led to ankle-high flood on the streets she was heading. This made biking even more challenging than usual. She would shift from wading to pedaling her bike. She finally reached her destination and got a hefty tip after the receiver saw her pants being soaked from the rain. The rain started pouring again, so she headed to the closest carinderia to eat and dry off. Every other courier delivery was also thinking the same. There was not enough space for her to eat inside, and if she did try to, she could not leave her bike unattended outside. She bought her food and went to find shelter. Thankfully, she found a tree sufficient enough to shelter her from the rain as she enjoys her warm meal. With so much water she drank, nature was calling. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as women public toilet here in Navotas, nor in the Philippines. She would have to hold it in and hope that she receives an order from a resto that has a toilet, or that she has to pay the owner so she could use it. It was finally evening. This was time for Manang Jocelyn to retire for the day. She is coming from Malabon, so she enters a narrow, dimly lit road to reach the ferry terminal. It looks like it could break any minute with its dingy wooden exterior, accompanied with the welcoming smell of river water. This do not faze her anymore. She wants to be with her family.
Everything points back to the people and the things they go to great lengths to survive in this dog-eat-dog world. This shouldn't be the case for our fellow Navoteños. Here is ReStitching Navotas.
We chose the North Bay Boulevard and Bangcolasi area as their site. Our task was to reconfigure and improve the connections and intersections between the different types of roads found here. The zoning map was obtained from the Navotas City Hall, and it was set in the year 2016 to 2025. The industrial core is located at the south of the city with a few commercial zones. Meanwhile, the middle residential is located at the center of the city. It is a combination of residential, commercial, and industrial that is located along the river.
The Navotas streets and alleyways are disproportionate to what they were intended to be. For example, in residential areas, sidewalks are either too narrow or they are barricaded with posts, vehicles, or benches. And some highways are so wide that at certain times of the day it would look barren. To help us execute and approach the project systematically, we created a profile of networks that will help us to categorize the different road types currently existing in the city. Based on our observation and research, we are able to identify 5 types of profiles.
Type A is heavy residential roads. Under this category, we have 4 road types which are labeled as green, red, yellow, and blue. Green is a purely residential use for small transportations, pedestrians, alleyways, and has no sidewalks. Red is heavy on residential areas with local areas such as schools, church, commercial spaces. No industrial areas are located here, small transportations, pedestrians, and has no sidewalks. Yellow is heavy on residential and local areas, no industrial, small transportation, pedestrians, and has sidewalks. Blue is heavy on residential. There are barely any sidewalks here, and it is along a body of water.
Type B is heavy on residential with medium-heavy commercial use. Under this category, we only have one road type which is labeled as cyan. Cyan is heavy on residential with medium commercial areas, small to medium transportations, pedestrians, and has sidewalks. Type C is a medium residential with medium-heavy commercial industrial use. Under this category, there are only 2 road types which are brown and red. Brown is medium residential, medium on industrial areas, yet heavy on local areas. Mostly small to medium transportations and pedestrians are seen on the street. Also, it has sidewalks. While red is similar to brown, although the road types to an alleyway and has no sidewalks.
Type D is heavy on industrial areas. Under this category, there are only 2 road types which are magenta and purple. Magenta is light on residential, heavy on local areas, heavy on industrial areas, and it accommodates to heavy transportations such as wheeler trucks and fast-moving vehicles.
And then we have purple. Purple is purely industrial areas, heavy on transportations, wide highways, and wide sidewalks.
The last type is type E, which are rivers. Rivers in Navotas are Tangos River, Tulyahan River, and Navotas River. Here is a map of how they interact and connect with each other. It can be observed that the magenta or C4 road cuts through the city coming from other industrial areas. With Navotas situated around bodies of water, it is inevitable to experience flooding. Narrower roads experience stronger floods, and that is exactly the situation with blue roads. It was determined that by 2030, the water around Navotas would rise nearly 11 centimeters, which will consume 28 kilometers from the coastal area. Our conceptual framework entitled Achieving a Human-Centric Sustainable City Port, we divided the areas that we wanted to improve into stages. These stages are arranged based on what is more valued and needed of the people. Also, these stages are arranged what will be prioritized in the project, and some will be added as supporting layers. Infrastructure and mobility will be the prioritized aspect that is heavily focused on rehabilitating terminals and flood management systems. Meanwhile, commercial and welfare will be supporting layers for the first 2.
We have 3 goals in our project. One is to aid the fishermen in the city. Second is to alleviate the dynamics of the residential industrial areas. And lastly, to improve the welfare and city living for Navoteños. Having cited our 3 goals, these are the objectives that could push our agenda further. Number 1, to improve not just the roads but the surrounding utilities or infrastructures, specifically terminals, ports, and markets. Number 2, redesign common road networks to be both balanced in terms of residential and industrial use. Number 3, make pedestrians commuting comfortable and safer. Number 4, alleviate the flooding problem of the city. Number 5, to combat pollution. Number 6, design streets that exude the character and identity of Navotas. And lastly, promote the economy of small and local businesses. After thorough research and analyzing the situation of Navotas, we want to make sure the design is sustainable and not just a band-aid solution. Starting with the smallest type, which is type A, just a refresher, this is what we identified as purely residential area. The first is green. We introduced restricting streets from vehicular traffic. By doing this, we choose to demolish the sidewalk and make it leveled to emphasize that these types of streets are dominated by pedestrians. There have been multiple case studies that prove pedestrian-centered roads to be very effective, promoting healthy lifestyle and a stronger bare connection with their surroundings. However, it is still a residential area, so we cannot stop vehicle owners from entering these roads to access their home. We introduce automatic bollards to temporarily blockade the ingress and egress of the road unless the homeowners has a specific remote to turn it down and allow them to get in. In complementing the pedestrian streets are the application of textured or pervious pavements to further reinforce the pedestrian priority operation of the street, at the same time reducing flood levels by absorbing the water on the surface. With the pervious pavement, we have green alleys to further push our flood management system. Following green is orange. They have similar implementation of design, but there are some that still differ. Since orange is a mix of residential and local areas such as schools and churches, we introduced the concept of food street crawls. Navoteños can finally immerse themselves in the exquisite food that their city has to offer. At the same time, workers and drivers alike have adequate shelter while they are eating. Furthermore, increase sales and push local business and tourism. It may look narrow, but we designed them in such a way that emergency vehicles are still able to drive safely through. And during Sundays, we can close down the road from cars to enter and reuse the parking lot for additional space for food stalls. Yellow roads are noticeably different from the purple types and the cyan and green. Yellow have more schools, churches, and commercial spaces. This makes the roads wider but not as wide as a highway. With that said, their sidewalks lacks width, therefore we had to merge the road and the sidewalk, creating a one-way street. This regulates the vehicle flow, freeing even more space for people and bicycles. To ensure speeds of cars are on the bare minimum, we added speed tables and chicanes. There's a temporary tricycle terminal directly outside the school for the students who need a convenient access point to commute. For the flood management system, to name a few, these were implemented. Rainwater gardens, infiltration garden, sloped camber road, water plaza, and green roofs. We have discussed neighborhood streets that got flooded from rain, but what about roads that are directly affected by the river? These are what we call the blue. Sidewalks are too narrow, so we made cars and pedestrians share the same road. Because of that, to ensure the people's safety, we implemented traffic calming measures. We designed all of our ferry terminals to be open air and welcoming. The colorway was intended to be bright and stand out so commuters can easily identify them. It houses at most 15 people, since it's not a popular transportation route. Besides the passengers, it also can hold a maximum of 3 ferry boats and 4 fishing boats with proper boarding and docking areas. Right in front of the terminal is what we call a levee. They are made to prevent the overflow of a river. We also included a path for those who want to walk directly alongside the river.
The design for the cyan road type was to dedicate a designated two-way bike lane, since in the project we highly encouraged the implementation of cargo bikes to reduce the heavy transportation on neighborhood roads. Cyan is considered a major road since it is the artery to the alleyways. Moreover, we wanted to make this road safer by implementing speed tables and vegetation barriers because there will be more pedestrians to accommodate for. As for our proposed approach for flooding strategies, we considered 3 levels. For the medium-level flood risk, we opted for rainwater gardens and infiltration systems. For the high-level flood risk, there is the additional use for green roofs and water plaza. Lastly, the very high flood risk includes the use of slope camber roads, and increased level for the sidewalks will be implemented. The strategies that we applied for the brown road type includes the following: providing proper sidewalks, dedicating the street for pedestrians, and improving its surrounding infrastructures, which are the market and the tricycle terminal. We also decided to make this street a one-way street since we dedicated one side of the road to be a walking street. Since originally, the other side of the road was blocked by the terminal and the pedestrians. As for our approach for alleviating the flooding, we propose two types of iterations in combating this in different levels. As for the high-level flood risk, we propose the use of green roofs, climate roads, and infiltration. Meanwhile, the strategies for the very high-level flood risk are the additional implementation of water plazas, rainwater gardens, and using a slope camber on the road. Reyes Street is a very narrow alleyway that caters for residential and local areas. Given the limited space, we decided to remove the existing terminal on the road and designate a terminal instead. Additionally, a design iteration of a food streetcar is also considered for this road type because we think that this could be one way to divert pedestrian traffic on the street. As for our proposed flooding strategies, we consider 3 levels that includes a variety of strategies, namely the use of rainwater gardens, infiltration, slope camber road, water plaza, green roofs, and green walls. Magenta is a highway road that accommodates residential, local, and industrial areas in Navotas. Currently, R10 Radial Road is an 8-lane road that only serves its purpose as means for heavy transportation without regards for the pedestrians. To make the road dynamic to residential and local areas, we use safety calming measures such as road diets to lessen the lanes for vehicles and speed tables to reduce speeding. Moreover, we also added bike lanes that are protected by vegetation barriers. And to encourage Navateños to use bicycles, bike share stations and public restrooms are also designed. As for our proposed flooding strategies, we considered 3 levels that includes a variety of strategies, namely the use of rainwater gardens, infiltration, retention pond that comes with protected fences or barriers, slope camber road, water plaza, and green roofs.
Here we have the purple. We removed the lane from each side to accommodate bike lanes and a street island that would be repurposed to a vertical garden or a retention pond. For pedestrians to feel safer when crossing the road, we included pedestrian refugee islands and shortened the distance of the crossing itself. They also are used as chicanes to slow down incoming traffic. Trees serve as a barrier between the sidewalk and the road. During our whole research on Navotas, it may seem like that I got the short end of the stick of industrialization. But let me tell you this. The local Navoteños have the tenacity and perseverance to overcome their disparaging situation. They choose to fend off what's left of their past and their culture. With our project implemented, bonds will grow and strengthen. Road networks will solidify the community and restore paradise it was known to be, but not just for the wealthy, but to be enjoyed by all.
Before we end the video, we leave you with this. The Philippine Islands, written by Emma Blair, Navotas 1900s. All that I have above related having taken place. It was decided to make peace with the nearest villages, some of whom had come to beg it from the governor, and others would not. Among those who would not come was a village called Butas, situated on an inlet on the other side of the river, flowing past Manila, and about a league and a half away. This village, uniting with the others nearby, sent word that they did not wish peace or friendship with the governor, and had the boldness to come as far as the village of Alcandora, quite close to Manila. Hence, they sent defiance to the governor and the captains.